All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Welcome to the July meeting of the Saraville Board of Education. Take notice this public meeting of the Saraville Board of Education was emailed to the Home News Tribune and the Star Ledger in accordance with NJSA 10:4-6 to 21, and a copy of this notice was also posted outside the Secretary's office and filed with the Clerk of the Borough of Saraville. Please rise for the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yes, they are. Mr. DeAndrea, roll call?
Just did it.
No, go ahead. Yes, thank
I'll
you.
do it the formal, we'll do it formally.
Okay.
Mr. Balca, Mrs. Bacco, Mrs. Bloom, Mr. Brzezinski, Mrs. DePinto, Mr. McEnon, Mrs. Trapp, Mr. Walsh, and Mr. Simon.
Here. I
now I feel better.
apologize for the flags. We've just adjusted. We have three presentations tonight. Two of them are on the agenda, but we have one surprise presentation. Mr. McEnon had made a profound observation a couple of months ago when he said to me, you know, in education, we value education.
Thank you.
Very profound statement. But he was referring to the fact that in the field of education, we value those who are constantly in a pursuit of learning and pursuing further degrees and enhancing their viability as an educator and enhancing their knowledge to be able to serve our students. And we're very proud tonight to have one such individual with us who you've seen at many meetings, but who has recently completed a long pursuit of her doctoral degree. So at this time, I would like to congratulate and recognize and have an official nameplate changing ceremony for Dr. Marilyn Shediak.
Thank you.
She's all shy.
I am. I can speak, okay. I just want to say it has been a long journey. It's been a very enriching journey, and I truly believe in being a lifelong learner, and I hope that others will follow along and do the same. And I want to thank the people I work with, the teachers and the administrators, for helping me along with this. My dissertation involved surveying and having focus groups with those groups, with groups of teachers and with groups of administrators, so they help to contribute to my study. And I really want to thank you because you do the true work here of educating our children, and we couldn't do it without you. But thank you.
Dr.
Thank you.
Zeitner, on behalf of the Board of Education, congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, we'll move on to presentation number 2, which is the 2014 Administrators Retreat and a special Legal One training session that we had over in Saraville. So we'll start out with Mrs. Facendo for the former, and then I believe the second will be Dr. Zeichner. I got to get used to saying that now.
Dr. Shediak, yes.
Dr. Shediak.
Either one.
Thank you, Mr. Sayak. Yes, we are required by law, actually, under the Achieve New Jersey Act, to complete at least 12 hours of training annually as administrators in the district. It used to be that it had to be 12 specific hours that were devoted to legal updates that pertain to public education. This year, they varied it slightly by saying that we could also spend time receiving professional development in areas pertaining to school reform. So we held our trainings on July 8th, 9th, and 10th. And there's a story that goes along with that. So Andrew, could you advance that? First, I want to say thank you to the Board of Ed. You actually approved NJPSA to do some filming here on July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. That was in conjunction with Rutgers University and the Tri-State Suicide Prevention Coalition. They made a film here that will actually be used to train administrators in New Jersey about the dangers of HIB and how that leads very often to suicide among youth. Because we were able to give them that approval, PSA gave us a $1,000 break on the training that I'm about to describe to you. So you did something very nice for the district. You did something for the greater community, and I am very grateful to the Saraville Board of Education for that. Andrew? You can go again. Go ahead. Keep going. All right. So we received a $1,000 cost reduction. Additionally, we had 3 administrators who helped out with that filming, and they will be receiving 6 hours additional professional development next year free of charge. You could keep going. On July 8th, 9th, and 10th, we held 2 of the days of training here in the high school chorus room because it was actually air-conditioned. And we were joined by administrators from Belmar Public Schools and Bradley Beach Public Schools. That actually happened because Mr. Preston he's the Arlith principal, but his children go to Belmar Public Schools, and he was chit-chatting with the principal after school one day about this vast training that we were going to be undertaking. They only have a couple of administrators there, so they asked us through Mr. Preston if they too could participate, and so they were our guests on that date. Our presenters were truly impressive. John Schoner, Dr. John Schoner, was actually a former member of the New York State Department of Education. He's had a lot to do with the development of the Common Core standards and the PARCC exam in that state. He is now working as a consultant with New Jersey Principals and Supervisors Association, and he came to our presentation. He did a phenomenal job. He actually worked with our staff members on how to lead the Common Core initiative. He also did a session for us on data literacy for administrators, and that's pretty important because one of the big trends in education nationally is to do what they call progress monitoring. We want to take a look at how our students are doing from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, not just on standardized tests, but on formative assessments. And the purpose of it is to really keep your pulse on our students. We want to ensure that they are college and career ready. Mr. Sayak, to borrow a phrase of yours, we talk so often about Vision 2030. For our kindergartners to get to the year 2030 and graduate college, we need to be fostering certain habits of mind. We need to be keeping a pulse on their achievement all the way along so that we make sure that nobody gets left behind. This is just some pictures from that day. I'm sorry that they're not a little closer up so that you could actually see some of our administrators taking part. On July 9th, we did some in-house training. Our keynote that day was by Dr. Richard Labby, and we're very happy to welcome him to our district. We've actually shared with our board members the agendas from July 9th, so you get a sense of the things that were shared with administration that day. My presentation really had to do with administrative updates and compliance because we are required by law to have all employees in the district trained on compliance law. And we ensured that administrators have in hand the different materials that they're going to need for the first day of school in September when they open with staff to that end. Mrs. Zeichner-Shediak, actually Dr. Shediak, excuse me, actually did our afternoon presentation on July 9th. We switched around our agenda a little bit to accommodate for Dr. Labby's keynote. And Dr. Shediak, I'm going to ask you to step up and talk a little bit about the Danielson training.
We've been using the Charlotte Danielson frameworks for teaching since 2011. And our administrators, we talk about it continually, and we've engaged in training. Initially, we had to be certified. Last summer, most of the administrators took a very long online training course and 2 assessments to be certified. We're also required, though, to participate in an annual refresher training and 2 co-observations a year to ensure that we have inter-rater reliability. And in addition to that, the administrators in the district had requested the opportunity to engage in dialogue with their colleagues to come up with the same language regarding the different levels of performance, especially between a level 3, which is considered effective, and level 4, which is considered highly effective or distinguished. So what we did that day is we divided into 3 heterogeneous groups. We mixed up principals and supervisors from all different grade levels, and so they could work together to provide just a different perspective on the observations and to provide their input to their colleagues that they may not get a chance to talk to day in and day out. Each group worked on one of the domains from Danielson, domains 1 through 3. Domain 1 is planning and preparation, domain 2 is classroom environment, and domain 3 is instruction. And what we did was we provided each group with pieces of evidence, and we asked them to classify them whether they were in a level 3 performance or level 4. As you might expect, there was some very interesting and lively discussion that went on before they came to a consensus on what was the level. We then compared it with what the so-called experts had said was the assigned level. Next, we had each group come up with their own examples of evidence from a level 3 performance and a level 4 performance from each one of the components. And then they shared those. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to totally finish and spend quite as much time as we liked. We did do some sharing, but we are going to continue this throughout the rest of the summer and into the next school year, and we will be continuing this ongoing conversation just to make sure that we're all speaking the same language and we're all looking for the same types of things when we go in and when we evaluate teachers.
On July 10th, we got the chance to get some nice digs, actually. The Legal One Foundation invited us to their headquarters at NJPSA and FEA in Monroe Township. Very nice venue, brand new, and very air-conditioned. We like that quite a bit. Next slide. Our presenters on our last day of training were David Nash, who is actually a Rutgers Law professor, and he is the Chief Legal Counsel to NJPSA FEA Legal One. He provided affirmative action training for us, HIB law, special education law. And then we had a very interesting fellow, Dr. Wayne Yankus, is actually a medical doctor and a Rutgers Law professor. He consults with several different school boards about medical and legal issues, and he actually started a process with us last fall when he presented to our nurses on Professional Development Day. At that time, he advised us during the training about the need for real uniformity on all of our different nursing forms, et cetera. So we spent a good deal of time with the nurses this year ensuring that everything was uniform, all buildings are using the same forms for all the different procedures that nurses are responsible for. And he has given us some very important legal updates. Probably the most prevalent had to do with the new teen cardiac law that has just been passed, and it's going to require a change to our different physical forms for student athletes. It will require physicians who give physicals to our students to give proof to the district that they have actually participated in a teen cardiac training module so that we are better aware of the signs for the possibility of cardiac arrest within a teenager who is actually participating in sports. So it was a really excellent training, and we're really grateful that we had the chance to do that. Next slide. So with that, I just wanted to say thank you again to our board. It was an excellent, excellent 3 days, and we couldn't have done it without your help, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Facendo. Any board members with questions regarding the administrative retreat or Legal One training?
I have a question.
Mrs. DePinto?
Mr. Pacendo, at our last board meeting, there was a question brought up whether or not our Sayville students were going to be used in the training. And the answer was no. However, later on that day, I was told by one of our parents that our students were going to be used.
They weren't used as actors, Mrs. DePinto. The actors were actually from Rutgers University and Legal One. They needed some kids for extras to fill up classroom space so that it actually looked like school was in session. And we did make arrangements at that point. We didn't, as of the June 30th meeting, we didn't think we had anybody who wasn't on vacation and was actually willing to serve. Those who signed up were given a legal release form from Legal One. We have copies of those, and any family who participated was actually given a $100 gift card for their day of participation. But the students were not the direct actors. The actors were actually provided by the company that did the filming.
But that was all set up prior to our meeting, our June 30th meeting, correct?
The
Because
The
that mother was
offer-
contacted prior to that.
Well, the offer was set up, but the response actually hadn't been received to any great degree. We had a couple of high school kids that we thought might be willing to participate because they were at a Saturday detention, and they indicated that they might be interested. But unless we actually have
$100 for Saturday.
parental permission, we couldn't have moved on that. It couldn't be done without parental permission, signature, and sign-off. So, I apologize if there was any misunderstanding.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions on the training? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to presentation number 2 by our new superintendent. Dr. Labby briefed me on some changes that he would like to make to our agenda and meeting format. I really liked what he proposed, but since it's the board's agenda, I wanted him to have an opportunity to present it to the board and make sure that the board was in support of it. So, Dr. Labby, I'll turn it over to you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Sayak, and I can't thank the board enough for an incredible 2 weeks on the job. As I've been explaining to everybody, I'm slowly transitioning into the position. I'm now down to 3 anxiety attacks a day.
Doc, the only thing I'm going to ask is if you could use a mic, because even though we can hear you, they can't hear you on TV.
Well, with the board's permission, I would like to go to the screen, because I would like to give my presentation from the screen. Is that
Then just speak
possible?
exceptionally loud.
I will speak exceptionally loud, sir. Do I have permission to do so?
Yes, please.
One of the changes that I would like to make is, when we do make a presentation, I would like the focus to be on the presentation, so, we can go over those things, so if it's possible.
We'll get you a wireless mic for next time around.
Maybe we can, I don't know if I need. Can we gently move this so that the board can see this?
It's better.
Perfect.
So that was one of the meeting changes he wanted to make. So,
Okay, as a leader, most importantly an educational leader, I subscribe to the philosophy that with enhanced communication, we'll be able to instill trust and lead to greater collaboration because of that trust, which will ultimately promote. Thank you. This is scary to give me this. Which will ultimately promote better outcomes for our students. So the changes that I'm going to propose to you today are changes that I believe are going to enhance the ability of the school district to communicate to the board and the public so that we can instill trust and, as a result of that, promote better collaboration and ultimately more positive outcomes for our students. The purpose for the change is to streamline communication in both directions, meaning from the building level up to the board and from the board level down to the building level. Through committees. One of the major changes that we discussed at that principal meeting, and by the way, Ms. Facenda did not mention the fact that there was a friendly wager during that meeting in which I boldly said that I could speak to the administrators within an hour, and ultimately it led to me buying pizza for everyone after that because it took me an hour and 45 minutes. But the board is no stranger to that with me due to my interviews. Anyway, we want to create building level, district level, and board committees that are aligned to one another so that we can get that information flowing up and down and then make presentations to the board and the public so that we can then incorporate public input and address public concerns and public questions. Okay? The proposed changes. At the committee level,
We have several committees that I recognize, mostly pertaining to negotiations. Then we have an educational council committee, and then we have a discipline committee, and I understand those meet on an as-needed basis, and that's perfectly fine. But there are other committees, particularly moving toward that Vision 2030, where I believe it's imperative at the board level that we meet monthly. Monthly so that I can inform the board of all the information that is coming up from the building level to our district level committees, that ultimately we may ask the board to approve on an agenda such as tonight's. In essence, what we want is every board member to be informed of all the critical decisions that they may need to make well in time before that Board of Education meeting. So, we'd like to continue with our Finance and Infrastructure Committee, keeping that the same. Student Achievement 2030, keeping that the same. Combining with Personnel, Operations, and Compliance, a Policy Committee, and of course those other committees we spoke of. The only major difference is those first 4 committees, or at least the first 3, I would like to meet monthly, because we have so much information for you that is ultimately going to be on an agenda needing your approval. With all of our committee meetings at the board level, there'll be an agenda for those meetings, either developed by the chairperson or the administrator that will be on that committee. And then there'll be a follow-up memo memorializing all the major decisions and key discussions that occurred during those committee meetings. The agendas will go out to the members of those committees. However, the follow-up memos will go to every single board member, so that every single board member will be informed of, again, those key decisions made during those meetings and those very, very important discussions. The agendas, the superintendent report agenda. We want that, again, to streamline with the committees. No board member should be unfamiliar with any of those items that are on an agenda, because you will read about them prior to that through the committee follow-up memos. That being said, one of the other changes that we'd like to make is the superintendent report. And we'll talk about that. In some districts, following Robert's rules, when a particular item is asked for the board to move, prior to the board voting on it, after it's moved, the board is asked if there were any committee reports. This is a time now in public for the board committees to share those discussions that can be shared. There are sometimes confidential discussions, particularly those that come from our personnel committee. But this will be a chance now for the board to share those key decisions and that critical content that's discussed during those committee meetings. That will also enhance the understanding of the public in terms of the items that are on the agenda. So prior to the voting of each major section, such as personnel, there'll be a committee report that goes over what we discussed and the decisions that were made. Meetings. Right now, in the district, we have 2 meetings a month on most months. This month and August are 2 months in which we only have 1. But on the months, during the months, I should say, that we have 2 meetings, again, this is an opportunity for the administration and the school district to provide presentations to the Board of Education and to the public about all the major things going on in the district, all the wonderful outcomes that are occurring in our schools. So we want to take advantage of the meeting time. And we want to basically identify each meeting as a separate type of meeting. However, both meetings, we may ask the board to take action on items. But we would really like that first meeting of the month to be what's called a workshop meeting, in which we devote the bulk of the attention of those meetings to giving presentations. Most importantly, as we enter the school year in October, what we would like to do during the first board meeting of that month is present to you what is called the State of the Schools Address. It's something that is common to some districts. It's a chance for the school district to celebrate all the major accomplishments of the previous year, to identify goals for the current school year, and to also look forward to potential goals for the next school year. That meeting will also set the stage for the next set of workshop meetings, and those would be budget presentations. In those meetings, we will break down the budget into a series of presentations so that we cover 98% of what's actually going to be in the budget. And we do that through presentations given by our building administrators, our central administrators, and our department heads and supervisors. This is an opportunity for not only the Board of Education to ask key questions with regard to expenditures, but it's also a chance for the public to ask questions, and a chance for the public to communicate concerns or suggestions to those people who are developing and asking the board to consider their budgets. By the way, we will be focusing our budget presentations on a zero-based methodology, meaning each presentation you'll have an opportunity to see what we spent the previous year, what we budgeted this year, and what we propose to budget next year, so that you can critically analyze the difference between what we spent the previous year and what we want this year. Next one. As again, I mentioned some of the proposed committees, and as you can see, what I did was I took different sections of the agenda and put them into those committees so that we could ensure that the different sections of that agenda in which we're going to ask our Board of Education members to vote and approve on action items, so that those will be discussed within those committees. So as you can see, within finance and infrastructure, obviously, fiscal matters will be discussed. Buildings and grounds will be discussed. Contracts will be discussed. Within student achievement, obviously, curriculum and instruction, educational programs, field trips, co-curriculum and support services. Within policy, we'll discuss potential first readings and second readings of bylaws, policies, and regulations, be it new or revisions to such. And then in personnel, we'll talk about anything involving certified and non-certified personnel. Professional development, including workshops, state requirements and compliance with those requirements, all of which will ultimately end up on the superintendent's report agenda. With regard to the preparation of the agenda, again, the items that will ultimately end up on the superintendent's report will be items that are generated from the building level, stream up to the district committees. By the way, there'll be a teacher representative on each district committee. More than one teacher from each building. We'll have at least one building administrator, at least one supervisor, one or two central administrators, and even some we're going to recruit parents to be on those district level committees. Again, the ideas will continue to flow up to our Board of Education committees, where ultimately they may lead to action items that are placed on the superintendent's report agenda. Now, with regard to the development of the agendas per meetings, because the workshop meetings will have substantially less action items on them, we're going to continue with the current practice of providing that agenda, to our Board of Education 4 days prior to that meeting. We'll also post those agendas on the district website. In the Board of Education section, they'll be posted on the Friday before a Tuesday meeting so that the public, too, has 4 days to read that agenda and prepare themselves for any questions that they may have with regard to it. Our business meetings. Because our business meetings will be substantially larger in terms of the agenda with more action items on them, what we're going to do for our Board of Education members is get you those agendas 11 days prior to the meeting in what is called a first draft. As the week progresses, more items might be added. And a final version of that agenda will go to you 4 days prior to the business meeting, and then be posted on the website 4 days prior to that. Now, Board of Education members, what we will do is, if there are any revisions, which include additions, we will italicize them for you in that final version. They won't appear that way with the public version, but for you, they will appear that way so you can discriminate between those that were there when we sent it 11 days prior and those that are there on the 4 days prior. This way, you have an opportunity to digest all the action items 11 days in advance, or most of the agenda items 11 days in advance of those meetings. There also will be occasions, such as tonight, where we might need to add things in terms of an addendum. However, there will be a strict requirement to get information in so that the final version that goes out to the Board of Education and that is posted on the website is the final version. And that's more of a compliance issue that I will deal with within the district. Okay? With regard to Bylaw 9322, none of these changes will force a revision to Bylaw 9322. As you can see, that bylaw states these are the items that go on to the superintendent's report. All that we're asking to do is combine the standing committee reports with the approval of the superintendent's report. I will still do a superintendent's report overview, but as you will see tonight, it might be different than what you're used to. This is truly one case where I will be succinct. Mr. McEnone likes that, yes. That just bought me an extra week, by the way. No. The other thing that I would like to include, and I don't know if it's included or not, I don't think it's on our superintendent's report or not, but I think it's important that those special committees that we might have, also those members have a chance to go ahead and report anything with regard to that, such as do we have a legislative committee? Maybe a report from there and so forth. That'll give us a chance to do that as well. And the other thing that I always like to do and to include, and this would be an addition, but I don't think it would require revision, I like to make sure the public understands the upcoming meeting dates. So I like to end with, these are the upcoming meeting dates so that the public knows when we'll be meeting again, particularly in those months in which we have 2 meetings. Again, I spoke about the Roberts rules that I'm proposing to use during the superintendent's report that obviously will be something that will be practiced only upon your approval. But in the Roberts rules, and there are variations to Roberts rules for conducting a meeting, but those that I'm most familiar with, based upon the districts that I've been in, basically begin with the speaker opens an individual section of the agenda and asks for it to be moved on. At that point, the speaker asks for committee reports. This is a chance for the members of those committees to share, again, those major decisions and discussions that occur. And then there's a motion that's asked of the board members if they would like to separate any items. So for instance, if I'm a Board of Education member and I'm reading items 1 through 20, and I'm fine with items 1 through 15, but I have a problem with 16, and I'm fine with 17, 18, 19, and 20. You can then ask that item number 16 be separated. course, that's motioned and seconded. When you call the vote, the board is asked to approve items 1 through 15, 17 through 20. Then the speaker asks, are there any questions or discussions about item 17? You can have questions and discussions about it, and then a motion is asked for a vote on just that item, if that's something that we want to do. And obviously, if there are such items, you would repeat those steps. Are there any questions at all about the proposed changes that I would like you to consider? Yes.
Mrs. Backo.
When you say that you want to move the items, does
Yes.
that mean we're going to vote yes or no on them?
Yes, you're moving them so that you can potentially approve them. You potentially vote them. You have to move them on so that you can vote on them.
And I
Or
had
we're
this
not voting on them, we're just
No.
moving them?
Yeah, I had the same question when we discussed this. We're basically holding a workshop meeting first where we're building the agenda. So
Okay.
we'll go through finance and infrastructure and move all those items onto the agenda, go to the next section, move them to the agenda, then open up to public, and then approve the superintendent's report as a whole. Mr. McEnroe.
That's one way of doing it. Another way to potentially do that would be to vote on sections separately. This allows the secretary to maintain a good, accurate count of the yes votes and the no votes. What becomes cumbersome when you're approving the whole superintendent's report as one, you as the board member are forced to say, I approve everything except G7, H9, and now Mr. DeAndrea has to go ahead and record that and figure all that out. If you're doing it section by section, now when you call the vote for A, finance, or A, buildings and grounds, if you vote no on a particular item, he knows right away your vote is yes for everything except B or A6. And then we move on and we move the next section on. Ask for committee reports. Ask if anybody wants to separate anything. Or you have any questions on anything. Before you vote, call the vote.
But, so then are you going to open it to the public each section? Is that the plan?
The public, after my overview, superintendent's overview, okay, then we'll open it up to the public for questions about the agenda items only.
Is that before or after we did the moving?
Before.
Before.
That's before. Then when you move, then it's your turn as board members to ask questions.
So, but the public doesn't get a second chance based on what the board discussion was? In other words, you're asking them to comment before the board discusses. Do they get a chance to comment based on our discussion?
At the end, they have a chance to comment on anything.
Right, but before the vote is my
If I could,
question.
I think, Dr. Labby, what Phyllis is getting at, the common practice is right now, the
Microphone.
superintendent goes through the report,
I can hear them.
and then before the board actually casts their vote, we open up to the public so that the public can make comment, because the board has made comment as the superintendent has gone through the report.
And if that's, again, the practice, an augmentation could be, again, what Mr. Syak just mentioned in terms of you can move those, ask questions, delay the vote until you get public comment and questions.
And you could still vote by section at that point to make it easier for
You can
Mr.
still vote by
DeAndrea.
section in that particular case, too.
Right.
It's been the practice of the districts that I've been in that the public has an opportunity to ask those questions prior to moving the items on. But-
And we used to have that process here, and the issue was that the public, would have some questions at the beginning, but then sometimes our discussion may, create other comments that they wish to share prior to us taking action.
And that's an easy augmentation that we can make to that, if that's something that you would prefer.
Okay.
Good idea.
Mr. McEnroe, you had a question?
I'm just, Dr. Lab, I'm just trying to think of a scenario where you mentioned where you have a business meeting and you're separating an item and you're generating board discussion. That should be done at the workshop meeting. That's why you have a workshop meeting. So when you get to the business meeting, the board should be already familiar with these issues and ready to vote, and that should go pretty quickly.
Well, in terms of You're talking about the committee meeting, correct?
No, I'm talking about talking about you have items on your agenda and we want to separate something because we want discussion.
The workshop meetings are meetings in which we dedicate to presentations and so forth. They're not dedicated to talking about the items in itself that are going to be on the agenda. That would be an agenda meeting as opposed to a business meeting. The workshop meeting is basically a meeting in which you're giving presentations on different things that are going on. For instance, we'll be doing budget presentations. We'll be doing that State of the Schools address.
The AP scores.
So in regard to your question, the discussion will occur about the items when we go ahead and move those items on. Then we'll have discussion about them. If you choose to separate them, it means basically that you're okay with everything except for that one particular item that you really would like to discuss, and you'd like to separate that from the others. So you want to vote on the ones that you're okay with, but separate that one that you're just not sure of yet.
I have to see it work. Fine, okay.
Any other comments or questions?
Are we doing this tonight? Are we
No.
getting a
No, no,
trial
no,
run?
no, no, no. This was planned for the August meeting if the board
It's a
concurs.
proposed change.
And I think, too, it's going to be a learning experience for all of us, and we may end up making some modifications to this process. And we might have to go through it once or twice to figure out how it works for us.
Dr. Larry, if I, just for clarification, so that basically the first meeting of the month, is the board still going to take action on items?
There may be particular items, and what we will do is this, what we will do is this, is we will basically sit down, and when we start planning these, these agendas, the question that will be asked is there anything that needs to be approved by the board that can't wait to the third week of the month? If there are items that cannot wait to that third week, then we'll put them on the workshop meeting agenda. So what you would walk into is, for instance, in November, we might have a budget presentation plan that's going to take a half an hour to 45 minutes because we're going to talk to you in-depthly about a budget presentation, okay? What a proposed spending for our schools, okay? By the time questions are over with regard to that presentation, then we'll move the 10 or so items that might be on the superintendent's report and take action on them. Far less items that would be on the business meeting agenda.
Is that what we used to do many years ago?
We tried a hybrid of that, and I think we got a little frustrated with it.
Yeah, years ago, what we used to do is we would have an agenda meeting where we would discuss the entire agenda on a Thursday.
And that's not what this is.
And that's not what this, and then come back on a Tuesday for 15 minutes and vote on everything we just discussed on Thursday. Or depending on the board, sometimes we'd spend another 4 hours rediscussing everything that we discussed on Thursday.
This is an opportunity for us to present to you in detail all the wonderful things that we're doing in the district. For instance, another workshop meeting that we'll have after the budget process is over. After the budget hearing, we'll still have workshop meeting, but that'll be a chance for the district then to go ahead and provide insight on some of the changes that we might be proposing for the upcoming school year. So that's where we can talk to you about, we're looking to implement a new program. And we're looking to do this in our science program. We're looking to do this in our math programs. And it's a chance for you to dialogue, ask us questions, the public to dialogue, ask us questions, present suggestions to us with regard to those things, and then also take action on the few items that we might need you to take action on that cannot wait until that third week of the month.
So as an example, if we were to model this process for this month, I mean, we received from Dr. Shediak the AP scores. That might be the presentation for the first meeting of the month, where we delve in and talk about our AP strategy, student performance, courses we want to add, et cetera. Then we get to this meeting. We would still have a very similar agenda to this, but in the new format. We would look at, for example, finance and infrastructure, which would be buildings and grounds and finance. Mr. Balka is the chair of that. He would give a report of the committee meeting which was held regarding those items. He would then make a motion to move those items onto the agenda. If Mr. McEnone has an issue with Finance 1, he would make a motion to separate that for a further discussion. The rest of the items would move to the agenda. We would further discuss item number 1. Once the board made a decision on that, that would move to the agenda. We would then open to public, get public input, and then come back and vote on each section. Is that correct?
That's fine.
If somebody moves to separate, then you have to have a vote.
Correct. You would need a motion and a second
You
to
could,
separate.
you
correct.
could actually make motions to separate when you go to vote. That wouldn't occur then. You could open up for, what we could potentially do is have our committee discussions and questions prior to the public participation. So we could have a motion, were there any committee discussions with regard to finance? Any questions about any of the items on there? We could answer those. Then, when we're through that, we can go to public participation, and then we can go through the section approval of each item. And at that point, Mr. McEnroe, you can then separate items and ask further questions if you'd like.
There's different ways you can model.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Then I'd like to make a motion that we accept Dr. Labby's suggestion on how to run our meetings, and we try it out and see if it works.
Second that.
I have a motion by Mr. McEnroe, and I have a second. Any comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Labby.
I'm not sure what to call it, but I'll figure it out.
The motion to follow Dr. Labby.
He's walking across the room.
Reorganize our meetings.
All right. Under correspondence, we have the monthly technology and maintenance work orders reports. Any questions on those? Moving on to approval of minutes. We have the minutes of the regular and executive session on June 17th and the minutes of the special session on June 30th. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes? By Mrs. DePinto, do I have a second?
Second.
By Mr. Walsh. And also, I want to thank the members of the board who could come out at the last minute for the June 30th meeting so we can get those maintenance projects started this summer.
And thank you, because they've already started.
Excellent. Any comments on the minutes? Hearing none, roll call.
Mr. Bowker?
Yes.
Mrs. Backup?
Yes.
Mr. Brzezinski?
Yes on June 17th, and I'll abstain on the 30th.
I apologize.
Yeah, I should have warned you about that. You're going to probably get 4 abstentions.
Yes. Mrs. DePinto?
Yes.
Mr. McEnroe?
Yes on the 17th, abstain on the 30th.
Mrs. Strapp?
Yes on the 17th, abstain on the 30th.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
And Mr. Sire?
Yes, and abstain on the 30th.
And that's just for the public, that's because the meeting was quick?
Yes, it was a 10-minute meeting to approve some projects, and it was held at 8:30 in the morning on Monday. And I was in Boston, and some of us were either at work or other places, but we managed to get a quorum to take the necessary action we needed to get the summer maintenance projects done.
Just for the board's purpose, I may have to confer with our attorney, since I don't have I only have 4-4, those minutes may not agree.
Those minutes, we'd have to confer with the attorney, because it's a majority rules, but,
Still 4-4.
Yeah.
I don't have a majority.
well, it's 404. We'll check with the attorney, and if necessary, you can put them on the following
Yes,
agenda.
that's just so the board's aware.
And also, the reason for that special meeting was the board received notice from the state that our projects have been approved for grant money, which is why we couldn't foresee the need to have that at our regular June meeting. Student Council representatives report, it is the summer, so we do not have that. We don't have the parent involvement report. They have not met. There is no attorney. There are no district highlights. I would, however, under district highlights, like to take this opportunity to thank Mrs. Facendo, who regrettably is leaving our district effective August 1. Mrs. Facendo has procured an opportunity as superintendent of the Manville Public Schools. So it's a great opportunity for her. One of her great legacies, I think, to our district, even though it's been a short time that you've been here, is definitely our high school strategic plan. That was one of the issues that we were struggling with when Mrs. Facendo came in, and with her leadership, in partnership with Sean Curry, in partnership with Eric Luck-Malloy, and the fabulous team that we put together at the high school, we really came up with a bottoms-up strategic plan that has faculty and administrative buy-in. And I'm looking forward to that continuing on as part of your legacy. So, Mrs. Facendo, thank you very much for your time here in
Mr.
Searle.
Sire. Thank you all very much.
And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Labby for Superintendent Report number 1.
Can I come back over here?
Again, as I promised, I will be succinct with regard to
to this overview. First and foremost, within our addendum that was given to you in Buildings and Grounds, we're making a revision to a motion that was approved back in January for the Snapple Bowl. At the time, that motion stated that it would be at no cost to the Board of Education, and we have now learned that it will be at a cost, particularly for custodial labor, maintenance labor, and grounds labor. In finance, again, with regard to our addendum, we have some key items on there, including a sidebar agreement with the Sayreville Education Association, as well as a health benefit premium holiday renewal rate motion. There's also a memorandum of agreement with the Principals Association. All of those items are on the addendum. With regard to Section C and D, that's personnel, non-certified and certified, we have an abundance of new hires. There are some salary amendments there. One particular thing I want to make note of, Board of Education members, Section C, personnel non-certified, number 8, we'd like to withdraw Felicia Manning from that. Once again, we'd like to withdraw Felicia Manning from personnel non-certified, number 8. And we're also asking the Board of Education to approve some substitutes, both at the certified and non-certified level. Policy, we have several second readings there. Curriculum, there are about a dozen tuitions that we're asking the Board of Education to approve, some of which are extended school year tuitions, but most of which are regular school year tuitions to some of our private out-of-district schools. And then finally, in H, support, we have several trips and an ESY transportation jointure that we'd like our Board of Education to approve. And now I'll entertain any questions that the Board of Education members may have.
Absolutely superb. Absolutely superb.
Now, if I had only done this back at our administrative retreat, I would have time.
And also for the benefit of the public and the SCA sidebar agreement that the board is approving tonight, as part of the negotiation process, we built the guides, and through no one's fault and no one's intention, there were a few people who, because of the way the guides were structured, would actually be earning a small amount less this past school year than they actually earned under the old contract. So rather than asking those individuals for a refund and creating a huge morale issue, the board is simply correcting that and basically adjusting it retroactively so that those individuals will be able to keep that salary. And that agreement was reached in concert with the Sayreville Education Association. Any other questions on the agenda? Mrs. Backo?
I guess I'll do this by page.
Sure.
Page 6 and 7, there's a Beata Home Health Care and an Epic Health Services. Different prices per hour, different contracts. Why do we have two? What's the difference between the two?
In many cases, when you're talking about services such as that, those are nursing services. Many times there's a comfort level between the parent and the nurse, and there's also a familiarity between the student and the nurse.
Okay.
So it's very difficult when a child has been working with a particular nurse for a given period of time to separate that child from that nurse to go to another nursing service. There are times when we may need to do that. Sometimes we might feel that a nursing service is not providing the quality care that we expect, and we might have to go ahead and use another provider. But in cases such as this where the parent feels that they're being effectively serviced, we hesitate on breaking that relationship.
And there was a middle school orientation on the agenda on Friday, but I don't see it here. Are we changing it, or, it might have just gotten moved, but of course you went through it so quick I didn't notice if it was still here. It was like right at the end.
Under what section?
It was on the old page 27, it's under G.
Section G,
Section G.
co-curriculum.
Yeah, it was page 27, I don't know where.
And what was the item?
It was number 12, it was for the middle school orientation.
It's still there, Carol?
Still there.
All right, where is it?
It's on page 27, number 9.
Yes, number
It's
9,
moved to number 9.
right below the high school activities.
Yes, there it is.
Okay, so I just wanted to see if it changed. That's August 19th, which is our board meeting. Is there any way we could have it a different night, or?
I can inquire
Okay.
with the principal to
All right,
see.
because I wasn't sure if it got changed or moved, because I couldn't find it. Okay, now, is this the time that I vote, or do I wait?
I would say at this point, if you're going to vote no on anything,
Do
that
it
you should
now?
probably mention it now so Mr. DeAndrea can take notes. And like I said, we'll adjust the process accordingly for the next meeting.
Okay. Hold on, I have to do this by page now. Are we going to do page, then we do
Please,
it that
so
way
I know
still?
where to go.
Okay. Page 12, number 4.
Page 12.
And page 14, it's letter C at the top.
Page 14.
Any others?
I think that's,
The only question I have, and I know number 4 was on our agenda for the meeting that I missed and it didn't pass. We're voting to make a salary correction for Mr. DeAndrea because it is, our agenda action item was wrong and we're voting to reduce the salary.
right, the only
Do we
reason
not
I'm
wanna
voting
correct it?
no is because I voted no on the original. So I'm just voting no on the correction. I just did it for consistency's sake.
Oh, so there's no issue, it's just,
It's just that since I voted no on the first one, I figured it was appropriate to be consistent on the correction.
because if you don't correct it, he gets an extra $60, so.
Well, you can correct it because you voted on it the first time.
Oh.
That's how I looked
I'll
at it.
just vote no then.
Yeah, all right, that's okay.
Too late, I already gave it back, so.
You have the right to vote however you want.
And is it,
Okay.
is
I
it
was
C contractual?
Yes.
Right.
See. Yes, that is contractual.
So how do you vote no on the contract?
Because she voted no on the, under that logic, you voted no on the
Right.
contract.
Right.
Yes, I did. Oh,
Mr. Ziak, I'm also voting no on the same 2 items because I've also voted
You
no
got-
the first time. also.
Same logic, got
Same
it.
logic, yeah.
You can vote no on something though, right, and still vote to correct something, right? if it's wrong.
You can.
Pass the board, okay, I'm just
You can. Any other comments or questions on the superintendent reports or any more noes or abstentions? All right, hearing none then, I'll open it up to public for the superintendent's report. Any comments or questions, please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. If you wish not to be photographed, please let us know. I think you're it.
she's consistent.
Barbara Kilcummins, 22 Schmidt Street. I have to be consistent because I'm commenting on every single board meeting, so no offense. Welcome, Dr.
Thank
Levy.
you so much.
I sort of like what your agenda is, but many a times at the public, if you don't come early and sit there and concentrate and read everything to find out what's going on, then it's very difficult to comment. Do you know what I mean? So if it's online, that I have to be like a board member, look at it a few days before arriving. Some of it, and I think I totally agree with you, it's building trust in the public. And I've said this before and about the public not trusting. And also the morale issue within your school system. So there has been one, even though a lot of board members didn't agree with me and denied it, and I kept telling them for at least 5 years, there is a morale issue, there's a morale issue. Of course, they didn't believe me until they finally get hit over the head and realize there is a morale issue. But a lot of the comments, like, it's so quickly to go through that, and I guess it just, change is change, and you really have to get used to it. Hopefully, this will improve either public relations or whatever. I have a question. Congratulations on your doctorate. Thank you. What university did you get your doctorate from?
Nova Southeastern University?
Pardon me?
Nova Southeastern University.
Wow. Oh, so you did it sort of like online, or?
It was actually a blended model. I was in a cohort from New Jersey, and we had some online classes, but most of the classes also had a face-to-face component.
Well, it is difficult. Many of my friends receive their doctorate, and I know it's a long road. I mean, my uncle used to, when he became superintendent, and got his doctorate, he had to go summers, but he never reached it for his final, and that always bothered him at the end, and that's so I know the long journey that you're talking about.
Thank you.
My question is, though, a stipend, is this normal to give a raise for doctorate, or is it in the contract, or?
It's in Dr. Shediak's contract.
Oh, it's in the
also- I mean,
administrative contracts.
In the
then.
administrative contract, correct. It's in our principal's contract. It's also in our teacher's contract.
Well, the only thing I'm questioning is because Governor Christie put a cap, of course, on all salaries, and before we know it, she'll be making more than the superintendents, and you know what I mean, per student, so that's what you have. And I often said our administrative cost has been heavy, and with that, so it is quite a bit of money. I mean, I think the cap for a superintendent is $164,000, is it?
It's 167.5 for a district of our size with a
For
high school.
our size.
Correct.
So I was close. So that's the only thing.
Although if we get 500 more students, that number goes up by, I think, 10,000.
Okay. Watch it, Dr. Labby. She'll be making more than you. Thank you.
It's good for morale.
Anyone else from the
I actually spoke with you, and I appreciate you getting right back to me. I was wondering if there was any additional information that you found. After reading your report, it looks like some teachers are moving around for the various schools. And I'm wondering if the numbers are still around 26, 27 for first graders.
Yes, the current enrollment right now for first grade across the district is anywhere between 25 to 28 students.
Okay. And there's not going to be a helper in each class, or if the
Well, currently, the district is looking at a couple of different possibilities. One of the things that we're keeping a close eye on, and Dr. Shediak, you can jump in if you'd like, kindergarten enrollment, for one reason or another, is down significantly. So we're keeping a very close eye on that, and that might be an area in which, per school building, we can get relief from. If kindergarten enrollment is down so much that we don't need a section in a school, we can then make that section a first grade section. But we're not sure whether the decrease in kindergarten enrollment is just because people have not registered yet. We recognize that we did not have kindergarten orientation in the spring, so that might be the reason why we do not have as many students registered as we normally do. However, we're keeping a very close eye on it because that would be the most obvious way to provide relief to our first grades across the district. There are some long-term plans that we have and we're looking at to address the classroom sizes, and we'll be speaking more about that during different board meetings. We're also going to take a look at the ergonomics within each building. I actually had the opportunity to visit Truman School and take a look at the clusters.
yes, that was my next question.
Yeah, as well as the other classrooms. And there are some innovative and creative ergonomic strategies that we can go ahead and try to implement, again, to provide relief. So it's something that we're keeping a very, very close eye on. But one of the things that we're trying to be patient about is that kindergarten enrollment number.
Okay. And when is the kindergarten orientation?
I
Have they
believe
been
those are
set up?
scheduled for September.
September 2nd.
Okay. So we'll find out eventually then about how the clusters are set up?
Yep, in the very near future.
Okay, and then I have one other question, which I'm not really sure who I would address this to. You're talking a lot about trust, building relationships, and obviously the PTO and the board members are constantly involved in building that and kind of gearing parents up to get involved. We were having a discussion on the Facebook wall for parents of Sayreville, and there was a comment made by one of the current PTO presidents for this upcoming year about a bounce check, which I had done by accident, but it was brought up, and then another person had commented on it who was also a PTO person. How is it that you get people's personal information to not be given out to PTO people that maybe can't handle keeping information private? That's not really something that should be shared. And I guess that my question would be, if we're talking about ethics and whatnot, how that would roll down to volunteer people.
Did you discuss this with the principal of that school?
I did, actually. I've gone a couple of routes. I did contact the Sayreville Police Department, so I'm keeping it there because there was a various amount of legal things that had happened. That was one. Channel 12 News, which I'm involved with right now, talking about to see how other schools handle it and, you know, the conversation that took place. And I did contact the principal, but unfortunately, because the president of the PTO this upcoming year was not the president at the time that my daughter was in the school, she wasn't able to get involved. So I don't really know what route I should go with that. Because my daughter was at the UES, which is where it had happened, and I guess the UES president or vice president had the conversation with somebody else, and it kind of got trickled down.
I think they're looking to me because I've been a former PTO president. And I think what happens sometimes is they don't share information as to gossip. They share information for expertise.
Oh,
So that may
absolutely.
have been what have happened. Mary may have said to Sue, you know, I need some expertise in this area. You know, that's all I can think of is they were
And that-
looking for help in an area.
And that makes sense. I mean, I've been
Yeah.
vice president of the PTO many years also at Truman. But I guess I don't feel as though, whether it's you guys that have personal information, PTO that has personal information, the schools, anyone really, if there's information that shouldn't be passed around, it really shouldn't be passed around, especially on an internet site. I mean, people should not be talking about that, especially when it's a parent site for Sayreville or whatnot.
Yeah,
That
I
was just-
did see that thread. I think that's where you called the Board of Education a joke on that
No,
thread.
actually, I didn't. I corrected that and apologized. That was my talk to text, and I said, that's actually not what I meant. And
I think sometimes, you know, that Facebook gets a little, you know.
That does
out
get a
of
mind of its
hand.
own.
Yeah.
It
But,
sure
but
does.
as I understand, I mean, no one from the district that you're aware of shared that information. It was related to the PTO,
PTO
correct?
directly, correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
And that could be like a PTO bylaw thing.
That's
Right.
what I was wondering, actually. That's why I was sort of inquiring. I don't know if it is in the PTO bylaws, and if not, I think it's probably something that should be, but what direction would that take?
You would need to go through that particular PTO, because the board doesn't have any authority over PTO bylaws. They're maintained by the individual organizations.
Each PTO has their own bylaws. You can ask to see the bylaws of each PTO.
Okay. And then if you find out that bylaws were, you know.
Violated?
Yeah,
You'd have to pursue your own action through that privately.
okay.
Like I said, it's not, the board doesn't have any authority really over the PTOs in terms of how they govern themselves or how they handle their finances or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? Thank you. Anyone else for public on the superintendent's report? All right, hearing none, we'll close public. Good. Can I have a motion to approve the superintendent's report?
So moved.
By Mrs. DePinto, do I have a second?
Second.
By Mrs. Strapp. Any comments? Roll call.
Mr. Bauer,
Yes, except noted.
Mrs. Bacco,
Yes.
Mr. Brzezinski,
Yes.
Mrs. DePinto,
Yes.
Mr. McEnroe,
Yes.
Mrs. Strout,
Yes.
Mr. Walsh,
Yes.
and Mr. Sire.
Yes. Delegate to New Jersey School Boards, I have no report this evening. It is the summer, other than the fact that the state budget has been approved, which is good news. Committee reports? Curriculum, Mr. McEnroe? I'm sorry, Mrs. Bloom is the curriculum chairperson, but since she's not here, would you like to speak?
Sure.
Since you brought it up.
Curriculum Committee met and spent time talking about two issues. One of them was how we sequence of courses for science in the high school. We're still working on that issue with biology in the 9th grade, and we need to continue looking at that. We looked at a few schedules from other schools, and that's a work in progress, and I think that should be, again, on our agenda for our next meeting. The other issue, which was of interest of the Curriculum Committee, was with AP classes. And there was some concern by the board committee about the number of students that take AP classes versus the number of those students that take the test. So we wanted to poll AP teachers and get their opinion on a couple of questions. For example, we asked them, why do you think students take an AP class? And the responses were either they want their college application to look better, they want to be challenged at a higher academic level, they want to improve their GPA with the extra weighting of the AP level course. I noticed in the AP, and if anybody took a look at the AP scores that came out, I noticed in one particular subject area, we had 52 students enrolled, but 35% of them, about 18, actually took the test. A while back, if you recall, several years ago, the curriculum committee made an initiative due to the cost of tests to reimburse those students that score a 4 or 5 on an AP exam, to alleviate the concern that if I take too many AP classes, I think the fee is $90 per test, that could be a financial burden. We also asked that question directly to the AP teachers. Do you think that students that take the class should take the test? And the opinions were mixed. Some said absolutely, and some said no. So I don't know if that helped the curriculum committee. I've always been very vocal about this, and I think that if you take an AP class, you should take the test. And I don't understand why not. One of the questions that got a lot of same responses from the teachers was should AP classes be opened to more students, and the majority of the AP teachers said no. They wanted to make sure that those students that had the academic acumen, if you will, to take those classes should do so, and not others. So it's something, I'm going to pass this to Mrs. Backo because I don't think she had gotten a copy. And I think, again, we need to review this at our next curriculum meeting. But it's always the idea of moving the bar up and looking at the AP classes and why we don't have as many kids enrolled and as many kids taking the test. And I think it's still inconclusive on why that is, but we'll continue to work it. Other than that, I'm looking forward to meeting once a month.
And I think as a follow-up to that too, and Dr. Labby, this is something that you may want to look at. I looked over Dr. Shediak's report regarding the AP performance, and I tried to draw some conclusions there. I ran some percentages, and I almost think we have an opportunity, to take a report like that, maybe in conjunction with the survey information, some other information, and try to synthesize that to a format that says to the board, here's strategically where we should be going. And I don't get that from just the data. I don't think you got it from just a survey. So there's a piece that it seems like we're missing that takes, the staff opinions, that takes the raw data and can give this board direction of here's where you want to take your AP program. And that seems to be a struggle I think that the Student Achievement Committee has had as well. We're kind of picking at it, and we know we could do better, but we're just not sure how to strategize it.
Well, and one thing too that the curriculum committee is aware of is that we want to see what the scheduling impact is. If it's a scheduling limitation as well with the number of AP courses a student can take. There's been talk about the block schedule and that type of thing, and I think that's where we need to continually focus. And Ms. Krasinski, who was our science supervisor, was there and provided a lot of good insight into why we can do things and what our limitations are. So, I'm excited to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
This is what we're about.
All right, thank you, Mr. McEnroe. And any other committee reports? Hearing none, is there any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'll open it up to public for any item concerning the district. Mrs. Kilcom, you're making up for the fact you weren't here during the winter.
Oh, I was in Florida, that's why. They missed me. Sure. Dr. Alfano told me to bring it up with you, the new
It's interesting, a lot of people have said the same thing.
He said the same thing to you?
First thrown under
He
the
said he
bus.
passed the buck. It's something that's near and dear to me, is that sign out front, Sayreville High School, with no agenda on it, nothing, no lights. I get very, very jealous every time I go by East Brunswick High School and I see that sign. We are the host for Snapple for 2 counties, Middlesex and Union, which takes place in 2 days. There's not one sign out there that it's going to, Snapple game, 3,000 people they're anticipating. It's a charity event. And that's, to me, a major thing, and that's our home, and that we should be saying that there's a Snapple. The sign doesn't work. I don't care if it's a hand sign you have to put up, like they put up in the middle school, but at least have something. Many times I drive by, the community will be saying, what's going on at the high school? I saw a crowd there Friday, or it could be a play, it could be any type of function. The public and the community doesn't know what's going on. And I told Mr. Amidio to look for some money in the budget for a sign. If I have to take a petition for the public, for the community in the town, if they want a sign, I'm sure it'd be overwhelming. So,
Dr.
I'm
Labby,
dropping
I'm going
that
to take
in
you
your
off the
lap.
hook. Mr. DeAndrea, you
Dr.
have
Labby, I was
information.
trying to signal you down.
Your sign isn't working.
I
After-
raised no money.
After your comments at last meeting, I did some legwork after that, and unfortunately, the company that we purchased the sign from, Robson Company out of Florida, is no longer in business. Mr. Pantoliano, our Director of Facilities, has contacted one or two other vendors in hope of retrofitting the current sign. So we're currently looking into other options. Instead of taking the complete sign down and having to purchase a new one, we're first trying to see if we can somehow retrofit it so we don't have to spend the exorbitant amount of money to replace it and maybe just get it fixed.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't that a gift from the students or so? Didn't the students purchase that sign?
No.
It was the alumni
It-
association.
It was,
It
it was
came out of the
purchased with
student
student
activities
activities
funds.
money that
Yes,
was
it
left
was student
over from
activity
previous
money.
classes.
So
And I
Right,
mean,
but
it's really,
That's board money.
some of it may
wasn't
have been
really
board
student
money.
Yeah.
well, I don't
Just
care who
called
bought it
student
or who what, whatever. We need a sign, okay? Thank you.
If Mrs. Kilcummins is asking you to spend money to fix it, let's fix it.
One of the first.
Dancy, there's also borough ordinances about signs, height and size, and how far they can be from the roadway.
We met that when we initially
Yeah.
installed it. Yes.
Mr. McEnroe, with regard to those ordinances, how long does a message have to be in place before it can switch?
I know that's a part of the ordinance. I don't know. I could look that up real
Okay.
easy. I don't have the book with me, but
That would be helpful, too, so we could determine how much information that
I
we
know all
want
the
to...
ordinances are on the
put
borough
there.
website.
Yes, but I do
And,
know.
and I think you do need to check that out, because I think our previous sign
Because of
was
distraction.
slightly in violation of that.
Right.
I don't control the sign.
What- Thank you, we're on it. Anyone else for public? All right, hearing none, we'll close public, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
By Mrs. DePinto, do I have a second?
Second.
By Mrs.